Good morning. It's the biggest, my mother's the only one who's going to be proud to see that face that big. We are here with Impact Human Performance. And you folks have heard quite a bit already about the human experience, right, in our short time here in Orlando so far. That's what we focus on. Our focus is entirely on you and your experience, and then your experience with who you're interacting with. So our job is to really provide you and your organizations with strategies that help you do two things. Help you to manage your energy and help you recover from stress more effectively so you can be at your best more often for the people and things that matter most to you. Now, that's kind of a mouthful, right? So we're going to break it down in our short time here together. We're going to do a couple activities to show you what that's like, how that is to start to gain a little more self-awareness that's going to help you manage your energy and recover from stress more effectively. Now, why is that important for you folks? Well, I've grown up in the construction industry. I'm from the south side of Chicago, and everyone I grew up with, all our dads, were working in construction or the trades. And so I have a pretty good understanding that the actual job, the physical work you do, is probably the easiest part of everything you do, right? Why is that? Because you have these expectations from the insurance carriers, from your employees, and from property owners. And those expectations, especially with property owners, have changed in the last couple of years, where now you're not going into maybe necessarily always the empty house that they've left for you to do your job, but now you're going into the house where mom and dad are now working there, and little kids are in their rooms, and you've got to be quiet and be very cognizant of them, right? Ever-changing environment. What else? Let's start to pile this on. You've got labor issues now, supply chain issues, and now unexpected economic issues with the fuel increasing. So we've got all these stressors that are part of the job. And now let's talk about expectations. We need to deliver excellence in speed, quality, accuracy, and customer experience. So how are you going to do that? Because you don't just get to choose when you're going to do that. That's every day. Every day, that's the expectation. So you need to understand that the best way to do that is to be at your best. And that's not an easy ask, especially if you don't really know what that is or who that version of you is. So we're going to start today with talking about that person. Who is this person? Me at my best, right? So there's a lot of words on there. Becoming your best self involves optimizing all areas of your life to encourage growth, limit distractions, and focus on the goals you want to achieve. It's a lot, right? Let's start simple. Let's start simple, and let's personalize this idea of best self, who I am at my best, okay? So I've got a question for you. If you got paper, you can just write down these. We're going to do these short little activities. If not, just write this in your phone. What % of the time would you say you're at your best? Overall, on an average week, what % of the time would you say you're at your best? Just write down whatever percentage comes to your head, however you come to that number. Write it down, or put it in your phone. Give you a few seconds. Follow-up question now to that is, how did you come to that percentage? How did you get that number? If you're like me, the first time somebody asked me that question, if I was being honest, the answer would have been, it's a guess. It's a guess. I don't know, 70% of the time, 85% of the time, 20% of the time? I don't really know. And why is it a guess? It's a guess because it's hard to assess something you've never defined. My guess is that most of us have never been asked, like, well, describe yourself at your best. Who is that person? Get to know that person, right? How do we know what we're aiming for if we've never defined it? So what we want to do is spend a couple minutes here right now defining that person, getting you a little bit more familiar with who that person is, okay? So what I want you to do is think about when you're at your best. I want you to give me 3 words, write down 3 words that you would describe yourself at your best. 3 words you would describe yourself, not what other people think of you at your best, but what you would use to describe yourself. So for example, my 3 best self words are loving, patient, and understanding. When I'm at my best, I'm very affectionate, very open with my feelings, very welcoming to others, my friends, loved ones, coworkers. I'm patient. I'm taking my time in conversations and interactions. I'm not trying to jump in and speak right away or stumble over everyone and just wait till I can talk and I'm not listening at all. And I'm understanding. Whether I agree with the other person or not, I'm trying to understand their perspective before, again, reacting or responding just kind of a knee-jerk reaction. Okay? So what are your 3 best self words? So get a little picture of who this person is that you're aiming towards. Now, let's start to get a little more awareness around this person. During times of stress, overwhelm, frustration, when the day starts to win, which of those 3 words is the first one to drop? Which of those 3 is the first one just to go by the wayside real quickly? Again, for me, for sake of example, it's patience. When the day starts to win, patience goes out the door, and rushing in comes judgment. So suddenly, I'm not sitting back, listening. I'm telling you what you need to do, how you need to do it, because I am suddenly the expert on everyone and everything, right? So that's my sign that I know where I want to be. I know my 3 words, and when one of them starts to go, that's a sign I need to do something. I need to do something now, right? Because I'm veering off the road. So which of your 3 words under duress, under stress, is the first one to drop? Okay? So we're getting a little more familiar with who this person is. What are the signs we're starting to get away from who that person is? Now, why is this important? It's important because we want to be this person more often, especially in the work you folks do that's really around two facets, right? The physical work and then the human experience. So what prohibits us most of the time from being this person, right? We all want to be the best version of ourselves, whether we're talking about professionally or at home. What prohibits us from doing that? Well, a lot of times people will say it was this experience or this person did that or I had this happen to me and I can't get rid of it in my head. Okay, that's all realistic. But I've been doing this work for about 30 years and it boils down to 2 things that prohibit us from being at our best more often. And those 2 main barriers are the mismanagement of our energy and a poor response to stress. Now, why is that? Why is that kind of universal for almost all of us? That we're not managing our energy that great most of the time, and we don't have the greatest response to stress. Why do most of us humans have this issue? How many folks were ever taught this stuff in any kind of schooling? Right? Any kind of education when you were younger, skills development, any kind of other training you've done. Who got taught this stuff? Very few of us, if any of us, myself included. I had to go seek this stuff out, right? So we're never taught this. So how do we learn if we're not taught? We just kind of watch what other people are doing. And we kind of mimic that, right? And if other people aren't managing their energy well, and they're not responding to stress most effectively, we're probably going to follow suit. And then we just turn into grinding it out, pushing through, right? Just getting through the day, dealing with that frustration and just till we get home or till we get to the weekend. And then we'll let it go, right? But it has an effect on our body, and it also has an effect on our interactions, which then trickles down into our business. So what do we do about it? How do we start to overcome these 2 barriers that most of us as human beings experience? Well, the first step to overcoming these barriers to then become our best more often is to start to understand how to regulate our emotions better. Our emotions are what drive our behavior. That's the key driver of our behavior, is how we're feeling at any given moment. If we're feeling good, probably more likely to make a good behavioral choice. Feeling frustrated and angry, probably going to go that route. So what do we start to do? Well, let's develop a little framework here so we can all get kind of a common language going around this concept of emotional regulation. What does it mean? Well, there are 2 components to emotional regulation. Okay? It's your level of energy, that's on that vertical axis there, whether it's high or low at any given moment. And then there's the quality of your energy. What's going on with that energy, whether it's high or low? Is it flowing like a nice smooth river? Or is it leaking out here and there, or is it getting trapped? Okay? What's happening there? And when it's leaking, that's when you're trying to do too many things at once. You got to respond to the text. You got to get the bid out. You got to get to the next site, all at once, right? Somebody, the home's calling you with a concern. It's leaking out energy here and there. It's not flowing smoothly. Or it's trapped. You just had a rough exchange with one of your workers, and now you may literally have to turn around, put that down, and put the happy face on for the property owner, right? So that energy is being used properly. It's just getting trapped down. It's not flowing again. And all of this puts strain on your body. And if that's happening more times than not, it's starting to break your body down. And it becomes much harder to be at your best more often if your body's slowly breaking down. So what do we want to do here? Again, we want to get an understanding of what's going on with this concept of emotional regulation. So I'm going to go through each of these 4 quadrants as they intersect the 2 components of energy. So we're going to start on this top right. This is where your energy's high. A lot of energy, and it's flowing. It's flowing nicely, like that smooth river, right? You're just humming along. You might have heard the phrasing, you're in the zone, right? You're connected to yourself, you're connected to others, you're having good interactions. Everything's flowing like that. And some words to use there to define this area are energized, hopeful, passionate, optimistic, focused, collaborative, right? And my guess is if you look at those 3 best self words you wrote down a few minutes ago, some, if not all of them, would probably fit in this area, where your energy, again, is high and it's flowing, okay? We call this area of emotional regulation high performance. And if you think about most of you, you wouldn't be at this conference if you weren't high performers, right? So people see this and they say, I'm going to lock in there. Hopefully this guy on stage is going to tell me how just to stay there all the time. Just get me there, don't worry about the other 3. What do I do to stay there? That's my job. I have to perform high level all the time. You have no idea the expectations I'm dealing with, right? And that is almost true, almost true. But there is a danger in trying to be in this high performance quadrant all the time. And we'll talk about it in a minute, okay? Let's move to this top left now, where again, your energy is high. Energy's up. But now it's leaking again. It's leaking or it's getting trapped. It's getting trapped. So it's not flowing at this point. What's going on there? Well, here we're frustrated. We're angry, defensive, anxious, reactive, maybe even combative at times. What do we call this? This is your stress response, okay? This is what's called the fight or flight response, where your body is getting a danger signal from your mind. Whether that danger is true or not, real or imagined, the body doesn't know the difference. So it is getting ready to run, it is gearing up to run or to fight or to defend itself. And that takes a lot of energy and puts a lot of strain on you. Now, everybody hears stress response and it's automatically bad. It actually isn't. It actually isn't. Our body wouldn't do anything to harm us intentionally. So this stress response wouldn't exist if our body thought it was harmful for us. Here's where it's good for us. The stress response brings about high energy. So if something goes wrong on a job and it frustrates you, it makes you angry, what does it also do? It mobilizes you. It gets you energy to do something. So in small bursts, the stress response is a positive thing. The issue is, most of us, myself included, stay in this stress response too long. And we start to train ourselves to be in the stress response as the way to get work done. And that starts to break the body down. So I always say there's a pool here. We can dip our toe in the stress response. That's normal. That's human experience. We don't want to swim in the stress response pool. And unfortunately, at this point in time in our lives, most of us are swimming in this response. So we're going to talk about how to get ourselves out of it, because we're all going to go into it. We're all going to get pulled into it, or we're going to bring ourselves into it, probably on every given day for certain periods. It's just how long are we staying in it is the question. Okay? Now we're going to go to the bottom left. Here, again, energy is leaking or it's trapped. But now it's low. Now there's not a lot of it. So what's going on here? Well, we're feeling exhausted, defeated, maybe feelings of despair, feeling helpless, depressed, or broken. Okay? This is what happens if the stress response carries on too long. We start to dip down into this lower left area here. What do we call this? This is burnout. And as I said, I've been doing this work for about 30 years at this point. Never in my life have I seen more people in this part of the quadrants more frequently than at this point in time in history. Okay? And that is because we have trained ourselves to think in order to get work done, we have to be in the stress response. We have to be frustrated. We have to be angry. And over time, the body says, I'm warning you. All those feelings, that frustration, angry, anxious, that's the body's warning signs. Saying, I'm warning you, we got to get out of this or things are going to happen. Bad things are going to happen if we don't get out of this. And if we don't heed those warnings, if we don't know what to do when we're getting those warnings, after a while the body's going to say, I'm done, I'm tapping out, and it'll bring you into burnout. There's a phrase in athletics that Father Time is undefeated, meaning for all athletes, no matter what, at some point they're going to get too old to play the sport professionally. Well, the phrase in stress is, the body's undefeated. If you ignore stress and you continue to ignore it, the body's going to win, and it's going to take you out of the game, whatever your game is. Okay, that's what burnout is. So again, the question is, what do we do? What do we do? Because the goal is to be at our best more often. So what do we do? Well, let's go to this bottom right quadrant here, where energy now is flowing again, but it's low, but it's flowing. Smooth. What's going on here? Well, here we're peaceful, we're calm, we're relieved, we're centered, receptive, and relaxed. Sounds pretty good, right? What do we call this? This is recovery. This is recovery. And the punchline to this whole slide is that all roads do not lead to high performance. All roads need to lead to recovery. What do I mean by that? I said earlier that high performance should not be the goal, the always-on goal. Obviously, you all need to and want to perform at a high level most of the time. It just can't be all of the time. Okay? Why? Because high performance requires high energy. And the human body cannot be at high energy all of the time. It needs to oscillate between high performance and recovery. That is the ideal day, so to speak. This isn't over time, this is on a given day. You need to oscillate, figure out how to start oscillating between this concept of high performance, getting your work done at a high level, meeting expectations, dealing with human beings and the human experience, and then periods of recovery. Okay? So the ideal is we're staying oscillating back and forth on the right side of the quadrants there between high performance and recovery. The reality is right now is that what we're really doing is going from high performance to stress response, high performance to stress response. And that's how our day goes. And in thinking about that, what does that require? Again, all we're doing is staying at high energy. Sometimes that energy is flowing, and other times it's not, right? So now it's straining and confusing our body. High performance to stress. And how do we show up at home then? That's the next question. I know we're focused a lot on the job and what we need to do during the course of our quote-unquote work day. But if we're bouncing back from high performance to stress during the day, during our work time, what version of you is showing up at home? Right? My guess is, unfortunately, it's probably that burnout version at the end of the day. You're just spent. The battery's low or empty by the end of the day. So what do? Again, all roads need to lead to recovery. No matter which quadrant you're in, how do you get yourself into recovery and then get yourself back to high performance? That's the question. So I'm saying this concept of recovery a lot. What does it mean? What does that really mean, right? Because I say that word and a lot of people think it's something to be done in the future. It's a future activity, right? Okay, man, the guy's telling me to recover. I can do that. I'll recover, tonight after the day. When I get home tonight, I'll get a good night's sleep. I'll wait for the weekend. On Saturday, I'll just chill out on Saturday. Or I got vacation coming up in 5 weeks. That's when I'm going to regroup. It's a future event. It's not a future event. It's something that needs to be done every day. Every day. Now, I say that, and I'd be willing to bet 50, 60, 70% of you are like, do you know what my day looks like? I just lost all credibility saying it needs to be done every day, right? Here's what we know. Recovery can happen in as little as 10 seconds. You can give yourself mental and emotional and physical recovery in as little as 10 seconds. But the key is it has to be intentional. That's the key word here. It has to be intentional. What do I mean by that? You're working a job. You're having a rough conversation. That gets done, or there's a break to that, and you go to the bathroom. Or you text someone to complain, or you're texting about or catching up on something else. That's not intentional. Same scenario, and you take a breath, you take a walk out, you look outside, you close your eyes, you think of your kids. That's intentional. That's intentional. All your brain needs is a pause. That's it. And it will start to regroup. Because your brain and your body want to feel good. It's just that most of us have trained ourselves to feel stressed so much that that's what our body now thinks, that's how we function. So you start to give it those moments of pause, again, as little as 10 seconds, over the course of the day, at different points in your day that are intentional. Texting someone something you're thankful for, so they're not expecting it. Just those little things, and your body will start to shift, because your body wants to feel good. We've just got to figure out a way to retrain it to do so, that it's okay to do so. Here's what I mean by these little moments. Looking at this image here, I'm assuming most folks have cell phones now. I used to ask, does anyone have a cell phone? And we'd get laughed out of places. Think about your cell phone. How often do you let that thing, on a given day, the battery, run out to where there's nothing left on the battery of your cell phone, right? Probably never, or very seldom. How often do you even let it go to 10 minutes, or 10%? Where the little red dot comes up, right? That probably gives a lot of people anxiety. My guess is you have a plan to have the cell phone charged. You've got the charger, you know where to go in your car or at a site or wherever you are. There's a plan to keep that phone charged, to keep the battery running. Maybe not at 100%, but it's not going down to danger zone either, okay? So we've got a plan for the cell phone, which is arguably your most important tool in your business at this point. We have a plan for that device during the day. We don't have any plan for this device, right? This is our most important tool in our business. So what do you do? What do we do about that? Well, our last activity here is what we like to do in our work with folks is just emphasize the point that you just need to make small steps to start in this concept of recovery. Just a small step. That's the beginning. So I'm going to challenge you folks over the next 30 days to what we call a micro mission. And a micro mission is just that. It is a small step to start changing your trajectory, right? I'm just going to make a little small step today, and I'm going to keep on that small step rather than going where I was headed. And after a while, you'll see that small step is going to make a big difference. So the challenge for you folks here is this. Over the next 30 days, I want you to think about today and then start to implement 3 recovery strategies that you can do if you have less than 1 minute during your day. During your day. This isn't, I mean, you can do them at home obviously too, but this is during the workday. 3 different ones if you have less than 1 minute. Here's the thing. It's not that you heard that Sarah likes breathing and Sarah really does the breathing well and it works for her. I've never done it, I'm not really interested, but apparently it works for Sarah, so I'm going to do the breathing. No. It's what's going to work for you and how are you going to fit it into your day. That's the key. It's got to be personalized. This whole experience needs to be personalized. So the challenge is your micro mission over the next 30 days. What are 3 micro recovery strategies you can use if you have less than 1 minute? Test it, Just do it. We'll do a little hypothesis testing. Just test it over the next 30 days. Commit to that. Commit to taking some recovery breaks, less than a minute over the course of your day, regardless of where you are in the situation that's going on. Be intentional about it, and see where you're at 30 days from now. See where you're at in 30 days. Okay? So we've taken a bit of a journey today, but of a quick one. But we started by saying, okay, what's going on here? What are the stresses? We got the job, and then we've got the human experience and expectations. We can actually control both to a degree and not allow it to take us away from being at our best more often, especially for the people and things that matter most. And for most of us, that's family, friends, and loved ones, right? So how do we do that? How do we do that? Well, we got to understand who we are at our best. We got to start to understanding who that person is. We talked about the two barriers that keep us from being at our best, the mismanagement of energy and the poor response to stress. And then we talked about how to start to overcome those barriers, and that's by regulating our emotions. The key take home here is, in order to be at your best, all roads need to lead to recovery. Okay? So again, I challenge you folks, over the next 30 days, think about 3 micro-recovery strategies you can implement where you have less than 1 minute, where you can give your body that pause and that break just to kind of regroup and actually feel good in that little bit of short time. And then see what happens in 30 days. Okay? I want to thank you folks for your attention. Thank you for having me here. Good luck with the rest of the conference.